In February 2010, BlackBerry was still the #1 smartphone platform in the United States. More than 42% of American smartphone users were on BlackBerry. Apple had around 25%. Think about that. The iPhone had already existed for almost 3 years, and BlackBerry was still winning. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why that lead collapsed, how BlackBerry missed the shift that was happening right in front of it, and what the numbers actually show about when things started going wrong. A year after that February 2010 snapshot, BlackBerry's parent company, Research in Motion, reported nearly $20 billion in annual revenue and said it had shipped more than 52 million BlackBerry smartphones. From the outside, this did not look like a company in trouble. It looked unstoppable. But underneath those record sales, the smartphone market was changing faster than BlackBerry was. Just a few years later, BlackBerry would record a $934 million charge against unsold phones, announce thousands of job cuts, and eventually stop developing smartphone hardware internally. So how does the company that helped define the smartphone lose the smartphone war? Research in Motion was founded in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada in 1984 by Mike Lazaridis and Douglas Freegan. By the late 1990s, the BlackBerry name had begun appearing on devices built around mobile messaging. The first BlackBerry device to feature email capability arrived in 1999. By 2002, the company had reached 1 million subscribers. That became BlackBerry's great advantage: email. Before smartphones became entertainment devices, cameras, and social media platforms, BlackBerry solved a very specific problem. It allowed people to communicate while they were away from their computers. For business users, that was enormous. BlackBerry also built a reputation for security, reliability, and efficient messaging. And then there was the keyboard. Small physical keys, fast typing, a design that became instantly recognizable. The phones became so addictive that people started calling them crackberries. BlackBerry had created something incredibly valuable: a powerful communication device, an established business network, and a loyal customer base. Then, on January 9th, 2007, Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. The BlackBerry story is usually oversimplified here. People tell it as if Apple launched the iPhone and BlackBerry immediately collapsed. That did not happen. BlackBerry kept growing. The first iPhone had weaknesses, and BlackBerry already had millions of customers, strong carrier relationships, and a large position inside businesses. But Apple had changed something much more important than the shape of the phone. It changed what the phone was for. The iPhone used a large touchscreen. Web browsing became more visual. Software became more important. And then in July 2008, Apple launched the App Store. It opened with roughly 500 applications. Within the first weekend, users downloaded more than 10 million apps. A phone was no longer just the product made by the company that sold it. Thousands of outside developers could build applications for it. Games, navigation, banking, music, social media. Every useful new application gave people another reason to stay inside that ecosystem. And Google's Android operating system was beginning to spread across smartphones made by multiple manufacturers. BlackBerry did respond. In 2008, it released the Storm, its first touchscreen smartphone. It launched its own application marketplace in 2009. So the company knew the market was changing. But responding to a trend and being positioned to win that trend are not the same thing. At the end of 2009, BlackBerry still controlled more than 41% of the American smartphone market. Android was at just over 5%. By February 2011, Android had reached around 33%. BlackBerry had fallen below 29%. In roughly 14 months, Android had gone from distant challenger to the largest smartphone platform in the United States. BlackBerry also faced a deeper problem. Its existing operating system had been designed for an earlier generation of smartphones. In 2010, Research in Motion acquired QNX software systems to build a more modern software foundation. But rebuilding an operating system takes time, and BlackBerry was running out of it. Its first major device based on that new direction was not even a phone. The BlackBerry Playbook tablet launched in 2011 into a market Apple had already transformed with the iPad. The Playbook had some impressive technology, but its launch exposed how awkward BlackBerry's shift had become. This was a company famous for mobile communication, and yet the Playbook launched without its own native email, calendar, and contacts applications. BlackBerry was trying to prove it could compete in the new era, while one of its newest products was missing functions closely associated with its own brand. And here is the strange part. The company was still enormous. By early 2012, Research in Motion reported more than 75 million BlackBerry subscribers, reaching 85 million at its peak. BlackBerry was still selling millions of phones, still earning billions in revenue, still carrying one of the most recognizable names in mobile technology. But customers were increasingly choosing smartphones for different reasons. Apps mattered more. Touchscreen interfaces mattered more. Cameras mattered more. And once millions of users had built their digital lives around iPhone or Android, convincing them to switch became much harder. By 2012, the pressure inside Research in Motion was impossible to ignore. Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsillie stepped down as co-chief executives. The company's future now depended heavily on BlackBerry 10, a modern operating system and platform capable of competing with iOS and Android. But in June 2012, Research in Motion announced another delay. BlackBerry 10 would not launch until the first quarter of 2013. That delay mattered enormously. The iPhone had arrived in 2007. Apple's App Store had launched in 2008. Android was already the dominant platform in the United States. And BlackBerry's full attempt to rebuild its smartphone platform would not reach consumers until 2013. Finally, on January 30th, 2013, BlackBerry 10 was unveiled. The company introduced two new smartphones, the touchscreen BlackBerry Z10 and the physical keyboard Q10. This was supposed to be the comeback. But the market BlackBerry returned to was nothing like the market it had once dominated. Apple and Android had spent years building enormous ecosystems. Developers had spent years building applications for those platforms. BlackBerry was no longer defending the lead. It was trying to win people back, and the comeback failed. Later in 2013, the financial damage became impossible to hide. For the quarter ending August 31st, BlackBerry reported revenue of approximately $1.6 billion. A year earlier, the comparable figure had been around $2.9 billion, a decline of roughly 45%. The company then recorded a $934 million inventory charge related mainly to unsold BlackBerry Z10 devices, reported a net loss from continuing operations of $965 million, and announced plans to eliminate approximately 4,500 jobs. John Chen took over as chief executive and shifted BlackBerry's focus towards software, enterprise services, and security. Then in September 2016 came the announcement that effectively ended its era as a traditional smartphone manufacturer. BlackBerry would stop developing phone hardware internally. By 2016, its global market share had fallen to just 0.4%. Revenue that year sat at approximately $2.8 billion, compared to nearly $20 billion in 2011. By 2020, the last BlackBerry-branded phone had been released, marking the end of hardware production under the BlackBerry name entirely. But BlackBerry itself survived, continuing as a software and security business focused on enterprise solutions, cybersecurity, and connected device security. That distinction matters. This is not really the story of a company disappearing. It is the story of a company losing the product category that once defined it. So what actually went wrong? It is tempting to blame one phone, one executive, or one decision. But the evidence points to something broader. BlackBerry had built an extraordinary business around what smartphones used to be: secure communication, email, physical keyboards, enterprise control. As Mike Lazaridis himself later acknowledged, the company was so focused on security and reliability that it lost sight of what consumers wanted. Then the smartphone became something much bigger: a software platform, a camera, a gaming device, a social network, a marketplace. BlackBerry saw those changes and tried to respond. The Storm, App World, QNX, the Playbook, BlackBerry 10. The company was not standing still, but its competitors were moving faster, and BlackBerry's most important response arrived after iPhone and Android had already spent years building enormous ecosystems around themselves. And perhaps the most dangerous part was that BlackBerry's old business kept working for so long. The company was still breaking records after the iPhone launched, still shipping tens of millions of phones, still generating billions of dollars, which created one of the most dangerous situations any successful company can face. The numbers told BlackBerry it was still winning, while the market was quietly changing the rules. That is the lesson of BlackBerry. Disruption does not always look like disaster when it begins. Sometimes your sales are still growing, your customers are still buying, your brand is still famous. Everything looks fine. Until one day, you realize that your competitors are no longer playing the game you learned how to win. And by then, the hardest part is not recognizing that the world has changed. It is catching up.